Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I'm really excited about today's guest, Robert Woolfson. He's a very extremely dynamic individuals out of the UK. And today we're going to talk about he's a financial business consulting enabling small business to expand. So if all of you listeners out there, we're on the niche end of the tail. Today's going to be talking about financial awareness, management, automation. I love having guests such as Robert on the show to talk about business strategy and overall success. So, Robert, welcome.
Thank you very much. Oh, nice to meet you, Chris. Nice to have you on have me on the show.
Yeah. So, you have a very interesting background, and would you care to share your journey from working at the Royal Bank of Scotland during the credit crunch, which I found interesting, to founding successful businesses and how these experiences shape your approach to business consulting?
Yeah, 100%. So it all started when I applied for the graduates program in the UK. There's lots of graduate schemes, and I found out there were 15,000 people who applied, and I was one of the 400 lucky ones who got on. And they told me that you're going to be a business analyst in the Royal Bank of Scotland's liquidity department. And so I was like, well, my degree was in IT, so I don't know what business analyst is and what's liquidity and all these things. So that was my first experience in the Royal Bank of Scotland. And I started working in the head office. Liquidity is effectively, if you have the Royal Bank of Scotland is a bit like a pyramid. So you've got big banks such as big UK banks such as NatWest or Royal Bank of Scotland, and lots of insurance wings and other international banks as well, all under one pyramid with different branding. Liquidity sat right at the top and measured how many billions of pounds are going in and how many billions of pounds are going out. I think under 10 billion it wasn't even reported on. And so not sure if people have heard of a database. Well, I was working on a data warehouse. Even in this day and age, it took a full day to process all the data that was coming from all these brands into the liquidity system. And that was when it was around that time. So I worked my way up, and I was leading teams in the UK, in America, and India, and working for the liquidity department, producing these very sophisticated data cubes where they could see the liquidity of the whole of the group and then drill down and cut and dice the data as they needed to. Each project was £500,000 just to have every little element of the report. And suddenly there came the liquidity, the recession, and the data, and it was all kind of suddenly my managers were, Robert, we need to have this report now. And I didn't realize at the time, but they were reporting to the British government about the status of the Royal Bank of Scotland, which we all know now got taken over by the UK government. And I was there on the front end, the front lines, trying to kind of firefight our way through to gather the information, the data that we so desperately needed. It was a very interesting experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I assume you're when you're talking about the credit crunch, you're talking about the 2012. Is that the correct, or is that
it was a bit earlier than that. It was 2008, 9.
Okay.
And that's when it started. And then it went the whole way through. And for the Royal Bank of Scotland's perspective, it was because we took over a bank that was a bit unstable, and I was involved in that migration. And we were saying that this is interesting. This data looks a bit strange. And then over the next kind of months that followed, we realised that was pretty much the demise. So it was really it was quite an interesting time to be on literally riding that wave of the Royal Bank of Scotland while I was there, trying to kind of produce these complex reports for the key stakeholders of the bank, for the British government, really. It was at that point that I decided to move away from London, because I was working in the city of London, and go up north to Manchester. And so I had a few opportunities there. One of the opportunities I had there was a recruitment company, but they specialized in really kind of mentoring the candidates who are applying for the roles specifically. So that was my next role. It was mentoring and coaching these candidates who are applying for jobs, but then also running the recruitment aspect of the department. While I was there, because I've had an IT background, I also built the kind of IT system which formed the backbone of this of the company. If any of your listeners are any kind of IT back based in the VB.net and then moved over to Salesforce later on. And from that, we were able to also, it's all about the reporting, it's all about, we had specific targets set up, and using that IT data, those systems were so critical to monitor our goals and our progress as in the recruitment world, and also in the mentoring and coaching world, because it was a big target to make sure that people were confident and they were able to apply for roles successfully, and we had a good track record for that. So it was also it was quite a different experience from being very much in the IT business analysis, finance type of world, moving into much more of a holistic, people-orientated coaching type of role. So it was also a really interesting experience then in Manchester.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah, I
what let
love
me
that.
set up my company now.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I remember 2008, that that was when the whole world was, when the shit hit the fan. And I know, shortly after that there was 2012, which was the European debt crisis. One thing is talking about is this idea of financial strategy. And in your experience, why do small businesses often overlook the importance of using financial information to drive their strategy? And can you give an example of how this has transformed the business that you worked with?
Yeah. Actually started when I was working in recruitment, because I would have people come to me saying things like, I'm not being paid. It's like all these things which I know now I know are typical of small businesses, working with hundreds of small businesses around the UK.
Yeah.
So I was working with the candidates and I was working with the businesses from a recruitment perspective, and they would we'd form a relationship and we'd get talking, and they would say to me, I just don't know what's going on, because I'm doing really, really well, but I've got no money in the bank. I can't figure it out. What's going on? And that's when I started to work with them to look at their financial strategy and look at their not just the profit and loss, but all the analytics throughout all the key performance indicators, where we say, well, let's do a projection. The reason why, Chris, you asked how it transforms businesses is because a small business is usually really good at what they're doing. I've literally just come now for a meeting with a client. They do all the certifications for landlords, like gas, electric, the whole lot, and they're great at it. And it's a well-run process, and it's a brilliant process. But in terms of building the business, they know that they're kind of in the dark. Like, well, where do I go from here? Do I do a marketing strategy? Well, so how much do I spend on my campaign? Do I employ more staff to make it? Well, how much can I afford on that? How do I know if I'm doing better than last quarter or worse? It's just kind of running. It's going really well, but like, how do I actually build on that? So having a financial strategy in place where you say, what's my turnover? What's my gross margin? What do I need to do in order to get a higher turnover? And then how does that translate into my net profit? And then extrapolate those figures. Okay, that's this quarter. What about next quarter? Now, and then we're literally at the back of the meeting is, okay, so how much new business do I need to have a week in order to achieve my year's target? And that's really powerful. That's like, wow, that's actually, you're taking a random figure. I want to double in size. Well, okay, well, let's look at that from a KPI statistics perspective, financial perspective, and see actually how to get there. Oh gosh, you've got to do that a week. That's quite significant. How are you going to do that? And it really builds it. It gives it some kind of a baseline, a foundation. You can say, well, this is tangible information, tangible stuff I need to launch off in order to build the business. It's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of moving on is, which I love this idea, is like, financial strategy. So you mentioned also IT systems and recruitment. And during your decade in recruitment, you developed an IT system that became the backbone of the company. And how did the system change the way the company operated, lessons learned about the role of technology and business efficiency?
Yeah, it's funny when you're building systems. It's a lot of time it's quite organic. So you can build a system and you won't know if it's working or not for a month or two, and then suddenly you turn around after, let's say, 3 or 4 months. You say, oh wow, we've got some really really cool trends here that I can use. So for business efficiency, I would say that it probably translates into two worlds. One world I would call hard facts, hard trends, creating a strategy, a business strategy of, well, this is what product is going well. So, for example, in the recruitment world, it was a case of, we know that if we do that strategy for recruitment, we get more people into jobs quicker. And if we focus on this niche of candidate, well, then it could be that we can actually turn them around and get them into jobs as better jobs, better and quicker. That's, I'd say, one element. And the other element, I would say, would be a softer drive, which is that it empowers and motivates the whole team. You can now say, like, everyone in the team now wants to beat last week's metric. We would sit in our team meetings, and the team meetings didn't, like, a lot of time in small businesses, they don't know how to structure a team meeting. I don't know if you've come across that, Chris, or it's like they just kind of sit around like, how's it going? Yeah, it's going really well. Okay, great. Well, see you next week. Whereas if you've got statistics, you've got metrics, you can say, well, this is how it was this week. How did it compare to last week? Oh, it's worse. Why is it worse? Oh, it's better. Why is it better? And then it empowers the people on the ground to say, I'm going to beat next week. I'm going to beat it this week, and I'm going to share it in the team meeting, and I'm going to celebrate that. And it's really, really powerful tool for employee morale as well, to get everyone fired up and to try to deliver excellence. Push the bar. It's really quite cool.
Yeah, I love
we saw
that.
massive growth from the recruitment side of things. We saw a massive growth once we started implementing these systems.
Yeah, so fascinating. And I love, especially, talking about IT systems and basically building infrastructure to kind of set the stage. And everything is these days, it's data, and it's analytics, and it's all these APIs, artificial intelligence. Which brings me to my next question: is automating processes. And you talk about how to automate your processes, and kind of, you're obviously very brilliant, and give us a sneak peek into your thoughts on this, and how has automation changed in recent years, especially with AI, small businesses, etc.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say, there's loads of companies out there who do loads of dashboards and like I said, business automations and metrics. I don't know about other people, but it's very important to have IT for the business sake, and that's like always the kind of the starting point. Don't ever embrace IT for IT's sake. Oh, we're just going to take on this new shiny system that has all these little dashboards and pie charts and all that stuff. It's all just fluff a lot of the time. If you're not using it for a real business growth perspective, if you don't understand innately what you're trying to do with these dashboards and with these metrics, and the whole thing is just a nice silver lining. It's not real. So what I try to do is, the first stage is I look at the business and say, what are you trying to achieve? What's our goals? What defines success for you as a business owner? And a lot of the time it will turn into revenue or net profit. And then from that, we then work backwards, and what type of tools do we need to monitor that? That's the first thing I would say. So there's loads of stuff out there, APIs and dashboards that you can have, but you might only find one or two that actually suit your real business needs, that will report exactly the kind of stuff that you want to do. So that's really important. In terms of automation, I know businesses where we've scaled down the business from having about 10 full-time members of staff to 2. And because literally what's happened is that you can, if you have the right process in place, and there's two aspects to it. One is the automation side of things. So nowadays, like you said, with AI, communication with customers is so key. One of the biggest problems that customers have with all businesses is that I'm just left in the dark. I've asked them to do something, and I don't know if it's happening, if it's not happening. They're not in touch with me. I've got to follow up 5 times before I get any response. So with the automation tools out there now, it's so easy to have. What I love doing is that you say you have a Kanban, a system on a normal CRM system, this customer relationship management system. A lot of the time there's Kanbans, which are organize lists of tasks. And when one task moves to another task within that list, and you move the Kanban along, a lot of the time you just have an automated email going out to the customer with an update. Do you know how powerful it is from a customer retention perspective? They're proactively updated without them having to chase. It's phenomenal how just a simple thing like that can actually transform the customer journey and the customer experience. And then along those lines, you can have customer login portal so they can get updates. This kind of being very proactive. That's what I do with my clients, is use the automation to proactively communicate with the clients, right? Not from necessarily from a marketing perspective, but from a operations perspective. So as things are moving down, whatever industry you're in, as things are moving down the pipeline, you can you keep the customer proactively updated, which means they're no longer running after you. They're very happy to receive that update of how whatever's going on is happening. With the example of the certification guys, the gas certificates and electric certificates. So we've integrated in there an update system in their process, which every time there's any movement of he's drafting the certificate, or it's being processed, or it's being whatever the case is, there's an alert email to the customer, which gives them proactive information in terms of what's the next stage. That's really, really powerful.
So we're kind of ending on this conversation, and one thing that is talking about is you talk about your personal philosophy, and you mentioned that you love sharing stories and speaking to people, and how has this passion influenced your approach to consulting and business growth, and kind of leave it on a positive note, and then how can people contact you, follow you, reach out to you, check out your work, etc.
Right. So I love people. I once described my career path being in IT, finance, recruitment, and now I haven't mentioned today, but I've set up my own management consultancy where I help and support small businesses to create that structure and to grow using KPIs, using financial data as a backbone. So we monitor the growth. There are a lot of business coaches out there who focus very much on the emotional side of things. Whereas, although I am an NLP practitioner, I like to focus on the hard data and the process involved, and that delivers results. So I once was talking to someone about my career path, and they said to me, "Wow, that's a colourful career path you have." I've worked in a lot of industries, and I feel that what happens is that that all comes together within Precision Management Consulting, which is the company that I'm the management consulting of, and that I've set up now. And we've got some great guys who work for Precision, all specialists in different areas, in finance, in marketing and sales, and operations. And we kind of, through that, getting to know people. It's not about systems. It's not about finance. It's not about data. It's about people, about business, about making things work. And that's where we're kind of coming from. It's taking all that that whole background of where I've come from, my colleagues have come from, putting it all together in one big mush, saying, take all this together, look at your business holistically, and then let's grow the business from that very personal centered but operational focused business model. And that's really what it's all about. In terms of, if you want to get in touch, I do have a template which I prepared just to help you in terms of the first stage is to get clear the profit and loss. And just one point on this, Chris, because it's really important. A lot of businesses, especially small businesses, they say, look, I've got profit and loss. What's your problem? And the answer is that profit and loss is always for the accountant, and the accountant is there to save tax. So there'll be lots of stuff in that profit and loss which isn't really going to help you in give you a good perspective on the business. It's going to have a lot of random stuff put into different nominals because of tax savings. So the first thing to do is take your profit and loss and make it real. Own it. Take it, pull it apart, and take off things that don't really matter for your business. So I've got a template I'm happy to send to you, whoever wants to get in touch. And that's the first stage. And from that, you should be able to see some insights of where to go from here, what's working, what's not working. And then that's really what it's all about. I can feel happy that if you email me at info@precisionnmc.co.uk, then I'm very happy to send that over, and definitely be in touch. Definitely like to get in touch with anyone who wants to reach out.
Yeah. For all the listeners out there, let's thank Robert for coming on, really talking about this like a business podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation, and with that, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you, Chris.